I hope you all had a good and safe Memorial Day weekend. For our discussion this week, I thought we'd look at a sermon that I read a couple weeks ago by Philip Brooks. He gave this sermon in the late 1880s, and it was called The Seriousness of Life. Brooks became the bishop in the Episcopal Church in Boston, and he's also known for writing the words to O Little Town of Bethlehem. But this particular sermon he called The Seriousness of Life. He used as his text Exodus 20, verses 19, when Moses had gone up on the mountain and had gotten the 10 Commandments. And when he came down, the people said to Moses, "Let not God speak to us, lest we die." He thought that was terrible. He thought, here they were. They had seen all the things that God had done. They had seen the miracles that God could create, and yet they were fearful of hearing the voice of God. He says it's important for us to listen, to delve into the depths of our soul, to hear the voice of God. Some of the things he says are, the great mass of people are stunted and starved with superficialness. They never get beneath the crust and skin of things with which they deal. They never touch the real reasons and meanings of living. They turn and hide their faces, or else run away when those profoundest things present themselves. They will not let God speak to them, so all their lives lack tone, nothing brave, enterprising, or aspiring in them. He goes on and talks about it is possible to conceive of a world which should offer the material and opportunity of nothing but superficialness, nothing but making of money and the eating of bread and the playing of games. And in that world, a man might live superficially and get no harm. On the other hand, it is possible to conceive of a man who had no capacity for anything but superficialness and frivolity and dealing with second causes. But that man might live superficially even in this deep, rich world in which we live and get no harm. But here's the point. For this man with his capacities to live in this world with its opportunities and yet to live on its surface and refuse its depths, to turn away from its problems, to reject the voice of God that speaks out of it, is a demoralizing and degrading thing. It mortifies the unused powers and keeps the man always a traitor to his privilege and his duty. Take the religious life of a man. True religion is, at its soul, spiritual sympathy with, spiritual obedience to God. But religion has its superficial aspects. First, of truth to be proved and accepted, and then, still more, superficial, of forms to be practiced and obeyed. Now suppose that a man, setting out to be religious, confines himself to these superficial regions and refuses to go further down. He learns his creed and says it. He rehearses his ceremony and practices it. The deeper voice of his religion cries to him from its unsounded depths, "Come, understand your soul. Come through repentance, enter into holiness. Come, hear the voice of God." But he draws back. He piles between himself and that importunate invitation the cushions of his dogma and ceremony. "Let God's voice come to me deadened and softened through these," he says. "Let God not speak to me lest I die. Speak thou to me, and I will hear." So he cries to his priest, to his sacraments, which is his Moses. Is he not harmed by that? Is it not only that he loses the deeper spiritual power which he might have had? Is it not also that the fact of being there and of his refusing to take it makes his life unreal, fills it with suspicion, cowardice, puts it on its guard, lest at any time this ocean of spiritual life with which has been shut out could burst through the barriers which exclude it and come pouring in? Suppose the opposite. Suppose the soul so summoned accepts the fullness of its life. It opens its ears and cries, "Speak, Lord, for your servant heareth." It invites the infinite and eternal aspects of life to show themselves, Thankful to Moses for his faithful leadership. It is always pressing through him to the God for whom he speaks. Thankful to the priest and the church and the dogma. It will always live in the truth of its direct, immediate relationship to God. Make them minister to that. What a consciousness of thoroughness and safety. What a certain strong sense of resting on the foundations of all things is there then. There are no closed, ignored rooms of the universe out of which unexpected winds may blow, full of dismay. The sky is clear above us, though we have not soared to its farthest height. The ocean is broad before us, though we have not sailed through all its breadth. Oh, my dear friends, do not let your religion satisfy itself with anything less than God. Insist on having your soul get at Him and hear His voice. Never, because of the mystery, the awe, perhaps the perplexity and doubt, which come with the great experiences, let yourself take refuge in the superficial things of faith. It is better to be lost on the ocean than to be tied to the shore. It is better to be overwhelmed with the greatness of hearing the awful voice of God than to be satisfied with the piping of mechanical ceremonies or the lullabies of traditional creeds. Therefore, seek great experiences of the soul and never turn your back on them when God sends them, and surely He will. And he says the truth is that to be natural is to feel seriousness and depth of life, and that no man does come to any worthy quietness who does not find God and rest on Him and talk with Him continually. The contortions of the sensationalist must not blind us to the real truth of that which he grotesquely parodies. His plunder is not in thinking that life is earnest, but in trying to realize its earnestness by stirring up its surface into foam instead of piercing down into its depths. All is calm. Well, Brooks goes on and talks about more things and the reasons we need to delve deep within ourselves to hear God's voice, to hear God as He speaks to us each and every day. Are you listening to God? Do you hear His voice? Do you allow Him to come through? Do you spend that quiet time in the depths of the ocean, hearing all the seriousness of life and all that God is calling on us to be? Let us discuss this as we go forth and talk about what it means to be truly a child of God. See you at the discussion.